Welcome to the HPTV Podcast. I'm Mitchell here along with Jamie and Steven, your hosts, to take you through the Harry Potter TV show premiering in 2027. And we're going to take you through every step of the way, any production information that comes out. And today we're going to be continuing our deep dives, doing a simple one in Privet Drive. But first, there's some big news in the Harry Potter world that came out. I had forgotten that this was announced that this might happen a while ago, but we got a lot of the cast and the official release dates for the audiobooks for the Harry Potter re-release, but with a full cast rather than Jim Dale or Stephen Fry. Is that who it is?
Yes.
Which I've listened to both, and Stephen Fry, obviously a very famous individual, separate from that. But what were you guys' first impressions when you heard about this? I have never listened to a full cast book. I've listened to one where like there's a male and female narrator or a couple different POVs, but I've never listened to a cast book.
I've done graphic audios for a couple, so I think this will be similar. I don't know if it's a graphic audio kind of thing, but you like hear the background sounds of everything as well.
Do they have like a full Foley? So you like not you hear atmosphere and you also hear like clanks and doors and
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember they did that with some of the Star Wars books for the sequel trilogy, and so yeah, you like hear the lightsaber turn on and the like as they describe the fight and stuff. It was I don't know if I liked it or not. It was a little bit.
I
weird.
liked it in the way of like that. There's different people doing the voices because there's always some kind of that weird when it's like a girl trying to do a man's voice, a man trying to do a lady voice. Sometimes it works out. Jim Dale, our favorite, even with
the hottest Hermione.
I mean, that was my first thought. Was we don't need a full cast. We have Jim Dale doing a million different voices.
But that background sounds kind of like I did Fourth Wing at one point, or one of those books, one of the Imperium books.
Did they just take porn noises and put it in?
Well, that too. But every time someone's walking, it's like, not every time, but like she's running up the stone steps. So like instead of saying that, you hear her like running, but it's like almost too loud. I'm like, okay, let's calm down. But
wait, so they take out the line describing her walking up the steps and they just put the sounds. So it's almost like one of those old radio shows or something.
They say it's like, they say it's like a movie in your head. But I think it was funny because I'm pretty sure the last episode we recorded, I said to you guys, I'm like, whatever happened with that? Because it was like announced that it was going to happen and then we didn't hear anything. And then like 2 days later, they announced the cast. And my first thought was, why didn't we have Hugh Laurie on our Dumbledore list? And he should have been Dumbledore for the show.
Well, my other thought was that when we were talking about these characters, I think the audiobooks, especially the Jim Dale ones, I've listened to the Fry ones a lot by now, were a big part of our experience. Like I almost feel like when we talked about the characterization of these different people and the emotion, the fact that his interpretation, which of course it is the book, but I think his intonation and his tone and his delivery matters to how we interpret the lines. I think that's actually quite a big thing. That was kind of a separate already version of the books we had, if you will.
Well, and his pronunciation of things, like when some like people will say like nut instead of nut and stuff, I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's not what Jim Dale said. That's how it is in my head.
It's
now even when I read the books.
Accio versus Osseo. I'll always say Osseo.
Well, and one of the things I noticed most when I listened to the Stephen Fry version is it's like you said, there's different intonation and stuff, but he does like some weird pauses sometimes, or he'll put emphasis on a weird word in the sentence. I don't know if it's because like that's where he was flipping a page or something, and so he was buying himself some time. But it does make you kind of understand the story or that like event a little bit differently, which is kind of cool. So maybe that will get fleshed out even more with the full cast edition.
So I have this iPod Touch that's frozen in time. I haven't added to it since like 2015, and it has all 7 books, but 4 of them are Stephen Fry and 3 are Jim Dale. So even though I listened to Jim Dale's all that time, for whatever reason, when I was bootlegging all the audiobooks, that's the collection I ended up with. So it is weird that now the things that I hear as one or the other, but I'm excited to listen to the book this way. Like it'll all happen before the TV series comes out, and I'll go into the specifics now, but it'll be kind of fun. I've been thinking I'm going to reread book 1 really soon here with my physical eyes, because I haven't I've been reading books, but all on the Kindle. So I'm interested. And then, we're going to get this beforehand. But here's kind of some of what we know. Hugh Laurie is going to voice Albus Dumbledore. Matthew McFadden, who, if you haven't seen Succession, he's just a gem, but he's been in tons of stuff recently. He'll be Lord Voldemort, and it works almost too well. Like I'm worried it's almost going to be funny. Riz Ahmed, who is fantastic, is going to be Professor Snape.
Should have been Snape for the show.
Yeah, I almost think that would have been better. Michelle Gomez from Doctor Who plays Professor McGonagall, and Cush Jumbo is going to be the primary narrator. And then The kids are not known names other than Arabelle Stanton, our TV show Hermione, is going to be the audiobook Hermione, which is like, when did she audition for each one?
Questions.
Did she get this one first, or did some other girl lose her job, or were the boys not interested, or I've heard that these two boys are a little bit older, which then kind of makes sense, but also they're only going to do the first 3 books. 4 to 6 is going to be an older cast because they're all coming out next year, right? I'll go through the release dates in just a second, but I just want to get your guys' thoughts on casting, and then I'll give kind of the release details.
I just wonder if she was in talks to do it, or I don't know, maybe she was cast for this first, and then she auditioned for Hermione, and they're like,
That'd
oh,
be
she's
wild.
already doing that. That would be wild. But I also feel like she might have a little more time, or might have had a little more time than the boys, because they're in that first season or series of the show more than her. So maybe that was part of it. And she seems to have a little more experience. So maybe she has some type of voiceover or voice experience. And so, or maybe she was just willing to do both. I have no clue, but I think it's cool that she's doing it.
I don't know. I kind of think maybe she got cast for this, and then, I mean, I'm sure we'll get the story at some point, but I wonder if they just heard the recording and were like, that's Hermione. Because the boys don't really look that much like the characters. I guess you do have a redhead. You can't really
But
tell.
how many people would have been in charge of casting for both? Because this is completely separate. It has nothing to do with Warner Brothers, which I don't know.
It would
doubly
be. It would
as
have to just
interesting.
be like oh, I heard she's doing this. Let's look at her.
It's reinforced the choice, really.
But I think there's also someone who you may have said it, but I think there's also a possibility like someone dropped out or something, and they were like, "Oh, hey, because from what I get, it's all recorded already. They're done." And so I think that's part of why they were able to get certain people to, like, if they didn't want to do the full 10-year commitment, this was like, a few months commitment to just do audio and things. So I think that might have influenced who was willing to sign up for it and stuff as well.
Now, they did release a video, and it had a preview of like one line from a lot of the different characters. Can I play that? Do you think if I play this through my microphone, it's worth it?
Yeah, you can try.
Yeah, let me give it a try.
That sounds crappy. We skip it. It is, while Mitchell's doing that, it is interesting as well that they do, again, because they record it all at once, they have one set of, the main trio cast for years 1 through 3, and then they flip for 4 through 7 as to an older trio. So that was kind of an interesting. I understand it, but
yeah, because
it's also
you can't have someone's voice will change, but it's interesting they did 4 instead of 5, maybe. I don't know.
And in general, isn't it nice that like some things that, I mean, this was announced, they're doing this a long time ago, but like they just announced it's going to happen. The first one's coming in November, which is pretty soon, and then they're coming up pretty quick after that. I'm like, I love that, instead of having to wait 2 years for everything in our lives.
Let's go through those release dates, and then I'll play this preview. November 4th for Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets on December 16th, Azkaban on January 13th of 2026, Goblet on February 10th, Order on the March 10th, Half-Blood Prince on April 14th, and Deathly Hallows on May 12th. It's almost like they're like, people are going to be like, it's a TV show. People are going to listen to the book, and the next one's going to come out. Listen, the next one's, it's an interesting thing. It's got to make money for Audible, I'm sure.
My credits are called for the next 7 months.
I was going to say, well, it's also going to help tide everyone over until the series finally comes out in 2027. So, I mean, it gets us through May. Then you re-listen to the whole thing another, time or two, and then it's time for the show to start. Yeah. So
November to May, we're going to
help you
essentially have, an entire other version to some degree of the series. Let's see if we can hear some of this, where we get some individual lines from our narrator and some of our characters.
Trouble usually finds men. Because all have been killed. Or worse, expelled.
Follow the spiders? I'll never forgive Hagrid. We're lucky to be alive.
I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stop a beautiful and terrible thing. Harry.
Doesn't that give you just like Riz Ahmed? I'm just like, oh, that's just like the slight tweaking of this character, the voice, the feeling that you hope these new actors are going to bring to it, and you get that different bit there. It also made me think, because they picked such a popular Hermione line, I'm like, was that too similar to Emma? I don't know.
We're analyzing everything. I got like excited, and it reminded me again, because like we've talked about the show so much and we're getting into like the nitty gritty of it, you kind of lose this, like, oh, I'm just so excited that there's like something new coming. I mean, obviously we're big nerds, but it's like this has been ongoing for years and years and years.
When they release like these little morsels of anything are huge news. It is funny that this all did just drop at once. Obviously they released anyone who would be critical to the story or famous. Like, I wonder if the rest of the cast is going to be like Hagrid will be a no name or whatever because we don't have the name. But if it's cast and recorded, you would think they would have dropped it all. But they generally gave us everything at once, and it's coming out fast. They're not dragging it out. And it's got to be a big deal for Audible and Amazon in general. Like it's a big release for the Potter publishing.
When they announced they were doing this, I just assumed it was going to be like audiobook actors or maybe theater people doing it. So like the fact that they even have like a pretty cool cast is awesome. And, you know, there's a lot of controversy around Harry Potter and especially J.K. Rowling. And so there's always a trepidation that people aren't going to want to do it because there's already been backlash for some of these people from that and having to defend themselves. So I was just like, oh, this will just come out and it's going to be like an audiobook that's going to be a little cooler. But I mean, it's kind of fun. And then getting like everyone talking about doing the role and getting casted and stuff. That's been fun too.
It is awesome stuff. I also am excited because we talk about the show and, you know, worry about how faithfully they're going to adapt this and, you know, what they might add that we may not like or what they might not put in. But that's not going to happen with this. If it's word for word from the book, we know we're getting a faithful adaptation. I know there's intonations, a few things like that they can, you know, play with. But really, it's going to be cool to get the story exactly the same way, but you know, the exact same story, I mean, but in a new way.
And we have this to fall back on if the show fails because it's already there. It's done. Although Jim Dale's always in our hearts. He's been my therapy and my anxiety go to sleep for 20 years plus now. So we love you, Jim Dale.
Yes, I think he was the only one we needed. And it does make me curious. I don't think they'll go full graphic, but I wonder if we're going to get more background sound and everything on this.
I think we will. I think there was a clip where you like hear the train whistle or something, but I could be making that up in my head.
You know what is an incredible morsel of nostalgia for me is the little tune that plays before the Jim Dale audiobooks. Like it's almost, I don't want to say painful, but it's like, wow, the place that takes me back to and the fact that it is so specific is wild. Anyway.
Well, and they had to go and change it for just the 7th book for Deathly Hallows. That really was annoying.
Did they? I don't think I noticed.
Yeah, it's a different tune at the beginning. I was like, what is this? But it's okay. I'm not bitter. Not at all.
Yeah. And also, voicing these is hard. It is interesting that they're doing it character by character. One time I was like, I'm going to do this just for fun. And I started reading Prisoner of Azkaban. And I'm like, this is tough. It is not easy voice stuff to do. I told Tim Allen I would send him a version of my Dobby voice, and I still haven't come up with one. So maybe I'll workshop some, you know. Anyway, let's move on to Privet Drive, the first home Harry Potter knew that we see in the books, and it is a location in Little Whinging, Surrey, which we'll go into a little bit later on. But I think it's important. It's obviously inextricably linked to the Dursleys themselves. But Jamie, if we're gonna dive into Privet Drive, what are the critical events there that we need to remember and how they impact Harold?
Harold Potter. Like Mitchell said, it's in Little Whinging in Surrey, just outside of London. The Dursley family lives there. Vernon, Petunia, their son Dudley, and then, of course, Harry Potter resides there for many years. J.K. Rowling got the word Privet Drive from the privet bush, a suburban hedge known for separating and isolating homes. So it's a fitting metaphor for the Dursleys itself. And so I think the cool thing about Privet Drive is it's not a character in itself, but it does describe a lot of things about the characters. And it's the first location we see in the books. And it's our basis for who Harry Potter kind of becomes, because he doesn't remember anything before, of course, except for a flash of green light. But it kind of defines who he is in many ways, and he could have turned out a lot differently because of how he was raised there. So we start in Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone. And again, it's a first location we see. So it sets like the tone for our story. And the very first line, which I hear in Jim Dale's voice, because it's like, you know, when you read a book so many times, you definitely read that first line a lot of time. It's like the beginning of the Bible. But Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. So the house is an extension of their identity and them wanting to be private, but also wanting to be perceived as perfectly normal, regular people who are a little bit better than everyone else in their minds. So we start there. We see this perfect neighborhood, but then there's like little weird things happening, like an owl flies past the window, and the Dursleys don't know that, but we as the readers are seeing that. It's really cool how quickly she pulls us into the world and how we understand like, okay, this is where we are, and then these things shouldn't be happening here. And then as Mr. Dursley leaves to work, he sees a cat reading a map. At least he thinks he does, and he looks back, and then it looks like the cat's reading the sign, and we know that is Professor McGonagall. And then our other characters that we see on Privet Drive besides the Dursleys, Dumbledore arrives, Hagrid shows up and puts Harry on the doorstep, and then 10 years later, through the house and the exposition of the house, we learn very quickly that like Dudley's spoiled, has everything he could ever want, and then Harry, you don't even know he's there, besides the fact that he's a little boy in a cupboard under the stairs. He tells us how he's treated. He's awoken by his aunt banging on the door. And then next, Harry gets his letter there. That's the first letter that comes from the magical world to Harry, and it's addressed to the cupboard under the stairs, number 4 Privet Drive. And then letters flood the home and kind of wreck the home, and it's exemplifying that the Dursleys' world is being overtaken, like physically, by all these letters by the magical world that they've been trying to shove away and hide, and it's like turning the
I think
perfect
it's
time.
really cool because it's very invasive. Like you
Mhm.
can get the visuals of like these letters forcing their way into the house. They're coming in rolled up in the eggs and coming in through the mail slot and through the windows and down the chimney. So and that's something I think they captured pretty well in the movie. I think it'll be interesting to see how else they might do that. But they have their proper little world where everything is meant to be perfect, and then this magic just invades, and they're so pissed about it, which is awesome.
And it makes us so curious because every little morsel of magic that we get, we're so intrigued at where this is going and what this is, because of course you come into this so blind, and you kind of know you're getting this contrast between the muggliest of muggles, even though you don't know what a muggle is yet. Anyway, yeah, it's great.
Yep. It just is a great way of defining like what's happening, and a way of showing how it's encroaching on their world. And also Harry's trapped in this situation, and he can't even open a letter. So we jump into Chamber of Secrets. Again, we learn a lot about the family from this. We're at the breakfast table right off the bat. Harry is isolated in the home because he's not hearing from anyone at Hogwarts. But now we see a character shift in that Harry knows there's a world greater outside of Privet Drive. So he has a little more hope, even though he's trapped in this home, but he's not hearing from anyone. Hedwig's now in the house, so that gives him a friend. We see the back garden for the first time, and Harry sees eyeballs in the hedge, which end up being Dobby. Dobby, again, if the Dursleys didn't suck so bad, you would feel a little bad for them, how much magic destroys their house. But Dobby comes and gives his warning, and then totally drops the cake and disrupts their whole meeting.
Well, Mr. Dursley was telling a racist golf joke. So
yes.
Also, it should be noted, this is when we find out that there is an extra bedroom that was just for Dudley's toys. So yeah, if you're selling this on Rightmove here, you are looking at a 3-bed, one under the cupboard,
not
a bonus room,
not fire safe. But I did forget to mention that. So in the first book, they move Harry upstairs because of the letter saying the cupboard on the stairs. So they're like, oh, they know the layout of our home, and they know
Which
you're
is
in the cupboard.
just crazy because they had an extra room, and yet they put the kid under the stairs.
Dudley needed a space for his toys.
He couldn't put his toys under the stairs? Like,
no,
man,
too many.
Talk about screwed up people.
And I mean, and again, it just exemplifies how horrible these people were. And the fact that they only move Harry because someone knows that they're keeping him in the cupboard under the stairs.
It also shows that they're dumb or maybe they think Harry would have followed his mother's footsteps either way. But if they would have embraced Harry and treated him like Dudley, maybe he would have rejected the magical world. But instead, they made him a Cinderella. He had to cook bacon for them.
Yep.
And apparently he was good at it because she had high standards.
So we see the back garden. Dobby comes into Harry's newer room and messes up the whole dinner. At this point, Harry's like barred into the house. All his stuff is locked up in the cupboard under the stairs because they want to suppress his magic as much as he can. So the house is like assisting them in a way, suppress all that for Harry. And then the Weasleys arrive. They pull the bars off the window. Fred and George enter the house to go get Harry's case, and then Harry escapes. And then also what happens in this book pertaining to Privet Drive is that we see the Burrow for the first time and see that contrast between a magical home and a muggle home. And of course, as we learn and grow, like not every magical home is like the Burrow. It's definitely unique on its own. And not every Muggle home is like the Dursleys, but it is like that juxtapositions of the world and like how warm and inviting the Burrow is, and how it kind of reflects who like Molly is, and how all loving and caring and warm, as opposed to like the clean starchness of Privet Drive. And then we go on the Prisoner of Azkaban. It opens with Harry sneaking to do homework because he's not even allowed to do homework or anything. He hides his stuff under the floorboard.
Also,
That's
this
when he
is
starts
Alfonso
it up.
Cuarón's sin when he does magic there and doesn't get in trouble.
No, it's just fine. It didn't matter about that whole letter and everything that happened in the last one.
Well, he make something up too. Lumos Maximus, that didn't exist before that.
And I should say, in book 2, Chamber of Secrets, we get a letter this time from the Ministry to the home. So Harry's doing homework at night. We find out that Ron has tried to call the home and screw that up because he's yelling into the phone. There's a no magic rule. As always, Harry has to sneak around. The kitchen has now changed. There's a television in it for Dudley because he's growing in weight and eating all the time. And then we have Aunt Marge who enters the home. And this is the first time Harry longs for what the home was before because she's so horrible and mean. We know there's a tree now in the back because Harry recalls a time he had to hide in the tree from the dog Ripper, who was trying to bite him. And then Harry has his breaking point in the home where he accidentally inflates Aunt Marge and she...
Which
begins
I
floating
still don't
away.
think he should have gotten in trouble for. I know they gave him a pass, but I don't think it should have been an issue. The other thing is, I was watching Hairspray last week with our sister when she was visiting me, and I was thinking, Edna, the mother of Tracy Turnblad, the main character, is always played by a man. In this case, John Travolta. I was thinking I could play Aunt Marge.
There you go.
If there's a character with an over-the-top accent that I could nail and just be mean, and plump, I think I could play Aunt Marge. Yeah, dogs love me. We'll come in. Your 2 dogs, Jamie, can have a little guest appearance. One of them can be Ripper.
Fly them out. Fly out my dogs.
Private.
Here's what we should do, Mitchell. We should have you do that scene now. We'll get you dressed up and everything. Send it in, preemptively as an audition tape and see if we can get you and Jamie's dogs into the movie or the series.
We'll do it in November when I'm there.
Amazing.
Me and Aldo.
I also think it could make some pretty awesome TikToks that we could share. Highly entertaining.
So when Harry leaves the house, we get a little more of Privet Drive, the road, and he follows that down to this neighboring street, which is Magnolia Crescent. So we get a little bit out of, the house and Privet Drive, and that area of our Muggle world expands a little bit.
We already know this place is like torturous, right? So I think book 3 does a good job of introducing this element, kind of like you said, right, where it makes it even more hellish. And then, of course, Harry runs away, which is kind of like, why didn't he do that before? I mean, I know he kind of runs because he blew up Aunt Marge and he thinks he's going to get in trouble, but like, kind of makes you think, aren't there any better places he could have gone? And had he done that, would he have had an encounter with Dumbledore earlier? Is also whatever, because he needed that to stay his home so he would be protected, right?
But you have to remember he's little.
He was 11 and he was 10.
This is the only
yeah.
life he knows, period.
Like Cinderella.
Yeah. But like Cinderella, you're right. Cinderella made it basically to adulthood.
But I will say that it does also display that Harry's getting older. He's 13. He does feel a little more justified of I'm out of here. I have another place to be. I can figure something else out. I've already broken the rule. I did magic. So he thinks he's done. And then we do see Sirius for the first time quickly in Little Whinging. And then the night bus shows up and takes him off.
Well, one last piece of that, I just think, because we talked about the invasion of, magic into their house, I think that's what pisses off Vernon and probably Petunia too, is that, it's this thing that they can't get rid of, at least during the summer, right? It keeps going back. And just the fact that now they can't keep Harry under their thumb, because like you said, he has another place he can go. And so they don't have that control any longer, and control is very important to them. So the magic, like we talked, even with the Burrow, right, it introduces this element of kind of chaos. And it's a beautiful thing how the interplay there, like we talked about with the nice, clean, organized, modern house with the craziness of now Harry can just run away. He can go somewhere else if he doesn't like what they're doing to him.
Also the irony that it's the safe place. We find out later.
Yeah. It is his actual safe place. And again, for your home as well, you get a rhythm of your home and your kids do this and it's kind of crazy, but you don't think about that till someone else shows up. And then all that kind of seeps out because you can't hide who you really are, and magic is part of their lives and they cannot hide that. And Harry, who not so much in the movie, but in the book, Vernon's like, okay, yeah, you can go. But Marge is like trying to torture him because this is a whole family of effed up people. Anyway, Goblet of Fire starts for the first time. We do not open in Privet Drive. We start somewhere else. Exemplifies that we're expanding the world even more, even though it's a sad situation when it happens in Crazy Voldy. But the Voldemort's back in the world and encroaching. And so Privet Drive becomes like a little bit of a separate thing. And Harry's not there as long. He gets an invitation to go to the Quidditch World Cup. His scar, he wakes up with his scar hurting. So Voldemort is...
He's growing in strength.
Yeah, he said, well, in the book it says, but Voldemort couldn't be here now. The idea of Voldemort looking in Privet Drive was absurd. Impossible. And later on, we figure out that that isn't possible for a reason, but also to Harry, it's the worlds are so separate to him. Like, this is like this life, the Muggle world, and then he's over there in the magical world. Dudley's on a strict diet, so Harry's getting food sent to him from friends and trying to survive because Dudley got a little big. And again, the Dursleys don't do anything about that until someone else says something. When the school says something, then they are worried about what people think. And then the Dursleys' living room becomes a scene of more magical chaos when the Weasleys arrive via flu powder, but they don't have a fireplace. So they break in and literally burst into the Dursleys' lives.
I can't wait to see this in the show.
I
The
know.
tongue toffee. This is an important missing scene.
Lame that it's not in the movie, and it really is the Weasleys and the Dursleys, and they're literally like bursting into their lives.
You
and
mentioned that
interrupting.
this is the first book where we don't start there. We start with the memory of Frank, and then the critical bit before Hogwarts is really at the World Cup. So we kind of get only a sliver of the Dursleys. But in the movie, which look, I actually don't think this is a terrible choice. Obviously, I wanted that scene. They cut completely. I don't even think they filmed anything. Whereas other movies, they film things that got cut. This one, they just, boom, start. He's at the Weasleys.
And I thought about this the whole time I was doing this. I'm like, I almost downplay Privet Drive in my mind because the movies have so little of it outside of like the first movie. And then, the bit at the seventh movie. I mean, we touch there, but it's like, it is a very big part of who Harry is. And big things happen there. Like, I mean, we get some of that in the movies, but it is like, oh yeah, we're here a while for,
Well,
some of
that's what
these.
we talk about, like, why when we talk about the first season, right? Where we, kind of the argument where, like, it would be good to have 2 full episodes in the Muggle world, because Privet Drive is so much about establishing Harry and where he's coming from and why. I mean, so much of his worldview about, defending the little guy, him being able to kind of relate to Rod and not having the things that he wanted, right? His like best friend and that friendship is all built on the fact that how he was treated growing up and everything. So it's so tied to that Muggle world. And then just you get that sense of like liberation, right? When magic comes into his life. And he gets that kind of Privet Drive.
Yeah. So Fred and George give Dudley the tongue toffee, is that what it's called? And then Mr. Weasley has to stay behind to fix up the home, which is like a battle for him to do because the Dursleys don't want to let him even do that. Order of the Phoenix, this I will say is like the most Privet Drive kind of exemplifies what's going on. It's the first place we see after the events of the end of Goblet of Fire, which is a lot, obviously. Cedric died. Voldemort is back. Not everyone knows that yet, but Harry knows that and we know that. And so there's like a heat wave. I feel like Voldemort's back right now in my life because it's freaking hot. But there's just like a tension in the air. Harry's hiding underneath the window, which gives us another description of the house so he can hear what's going on with the TV, about Sirius, about weird things happening throughout the world. Like he wants to know what's going on because he knows now that this is happening and he's not hearing things from the magical world, which is frustrating for him. It gives us so we learn a little bit more about the layout. We hear a loud crack that someone magical was there again. We learn that Mrs. Fig has been around more. And I should have mentioned that in book 1. Mrs. Fig is mentioned at the start of book 1 as like Harry's babysitter. So she's someone around. She's someone we know who lives a couple streets away, who is in Harry's life in a way. Harry goes for a walk when he pisses off the Dursleys and explores beyond even Magnolia Crescent. He goes to Magnolia Road and then he goes to a park and jumps a gate, which is a very British thing that there are gates around every park. I don't, maybe that's other places too, but that's what it makes me think of. And then he runs into my friend Big D, Dudley, and his friends, and they go down a small alley. They're arguing. Harry pulls out his wand on him, and the Dementors attack. So magic is in Little Whinging, and now it's like bad magic is here. It's the Dementors, and it's really a reflection of like where Harry's at, where's the world at, depressing, worrisome. Harry takes Dudley back to number 4. Arabella Fig, Mrs. Fig, appears, and we find out that she's part of the magical world. Do we know she's a squib right off the bat? I think we do.
I think she says it.
I think she says it, yeah.
But she's been watching over Harry all the time. We find out Mundungus Fletcher was the one who apparated away, and that was a loud crack that we heard. Ministry letters arrive because there's been magic. Harry's in trouble. The Dursleys especially Vernon, want Harry out. They're done. But then 2 letters come from Sirius and Arthur telling Harry to stay. So Harry's receiving letters from people. He has gotten some, but no real information. And they're just saying, stay. And then Petunia finally gets a letter that reminds her of something. And then she completely switches around and she's like, he has to stay.
Which is our first big indication of any sort of connection. And like the way it blooms into the Prince's Tale is kind of wild. Yeah.
Yeah, Petunia in the magical world. She knows someone. He doesn't know who the letter's from at this time, but he knows that someone knows her and has reminded her of something, because I believe it said, remember my last. And then the Order of the Phoenix show up. So we have Tonks, Lupin, Moody, Kingsley, Doge, Dedalus Diggle, Vance, and then Sturgis Podmore. Oh, and Hestia Jones. So they all come to get Harry. Everyone volunteered to come get Harry, which is cute.
Everyone and their cousin.
Yeah.
Well, wait, it's important here too, because the reason the Dursleys are out is because that they get a fake invitation to, what is it, the best kept lawn competition or something.
They know
and
how
they,
to
of course,
play
are
them.
like gung ho, like, yeah, let's go get our awards so we can rub it in our neighbors' faces. And it turns out it's fake, so that more wizards can invite their house. I love that. It's so poetic.
It's beautiful. And it's just, they're so easily played. And then Tonks has a line. She goes, oh, very clean, aren't these muggles? And then later adds, a bit unnatural. And then she says, oh, this is better, when she enters Harry's messy room. So like, again, just like about the world and how different, the Dursleys are. And she mentions that her dad is messy and he is a muggle. Is he a muggle or
Muggle-born?
Yeah, he's
muggle-born. I almost said a derogatory Harry Potter term. Okay, and then Half-Blood Prince. Here we go. The first 2 chapters are not at Privet Drive, so we don't start there for a little while. And then when we do start there, we're inside Harry's room, and she really uses it as a lot of exposition of like the things laying about his room, what things are saying, because now Voldemort is openly back. Everyone knows Sirius has just died. So again, you're kind of feeling that within the world, but we're not at Privet Drive very long. Dumbledore enters for the first time. And it's kind of the calmest magic has kind of entered the Dursley's life, which is interesting because it is Dumbledore and he does have like this demeanor of calm. Again, not grabbing Harry. And he invites himself in the home, but he is disrupting them. Like he makes them sit on the couch. He has the glasses hitting them because they won't accept a drink from him. And he openly talks to Harry about things that are happening in front of the Dursleys. He talks about Sirius dying. He talks about Harry inheriting the home. He talks about money. And it's just like a whole new way that we're seeing magic in the Dursleys' home, but they still won't accept it, even when it's not so in your face. I mean, Dumbledore makes it a little face because you can tell they're like pissing him off a bunch. And he lectures them a little bit. He's like, I trusted you with this kid and you were horrible to him. And then Harry leaves. So that's really the least I think we're in Privet Drive as readers.
Well, that makes me think, I'm like, oh, should we feel bad? Is like there a joke where it's like, ooh, this from the Dursleys' perspective. It's like, no, they abused him, like clearly.
They locked the kid in a cupboard.
So in what world is it like acceptable for someone to be given a baby to take in, a 1-year-old, right? And then lock him in a cupboard, give him everything or not give him anything that your own kid can have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've heard people make that argument. It's like, no, there's no way
They deserved
to that.
every bit of chaos that came to them.
And then we're at Deathly Hallows, the final book, and it's the end of Privet Drive. And it's really like a major reflection, the beginning of our time there. Harry is saying farewell to Privet Drive, and it's like, as a reader, and I think they do this well in the movie, it does mean something to Harry. His room and once his cupboard were a place of solace for him. They were, his little getaways from his abusive life. So I feel like the way it's described, I actually was reading this last night and I got a little teary-eyed, but I get teary-eyed over a lot of things. But when they open again, there's a lot of exposition. We see the Doge article, we see Rita Skeeter, a piece of the book about that. So they're using, again, the house and the things laying about the house to explain what's going on in the world. Harry reflects on the fact that what we did learn in 5, at the end of 5, sorry, I should have mentioned this, that Harry is protected by the house because Petunia is Lily's sister and Petunia's blood is protecting him. So he is protected by the home and he is tied to that home in a way. And so that is about to break. He's about to turn 17 and that magic is going to expire. And so the Dursleys are leaving for a safer location. Harry and Dudley kind of have a conversation where Harry realizes really the last 2 years or last year or so that Dudley's kind of warmed up to him and realized that like Harry did save him in Order of the Phoenix, and also that Harry kind of is a victim of a lot of things, but I still don't think Dudley fully
Maybe
gets
his
it.
parents are terrible
Yeah.
people. He's coming to that
Maybe.
realization.
Well, didn't Joe say at some point that they exchanged like Christmas cards
Yeah,
later
when they
on and
grow up.
stuff, which I think
Yeah, when they're
is-
older.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and you look at it in a way like Dudley's also, I mean, the way he was raised is also somewhatly abusive. Like, he wasn't taught many life skills. He was given whatever he wanted. And then what people thought of him affected how they parented him. And obviously in a, not as bad as Harry at all, but it's nice to see that like he's learning and growing as well. It's kind of like we see with Malfoy. Vernon leaves angrily. He doesn't want to go. He's going back and forth. And Harry's like, you guys are idiots. You have to leave. Petunia doesn't say anything to Harry and they're gone. And then Harry has a moment of reflection alone when the Dursleys leave. He thinks about when they went out and the treats and the solitude he had, like sneaking from the fridge and playing on Dudley's computer. And it says it gave him an odd, empty feeling to remember those times. It was like remembering a younger brother whom he had lost. I forget. But it is like he's saying goodbye to that, a huge part of his life and something that really defined who he was before he even knew about the magical world.
He spent more time there than Hogwarts by
Yeah.
far. And I think
10 years of his life.
there's a loss of innocence, Harry. You could point to many things, but moving into adulthood, it's like you're saying goodbye to this thing that was technically safe for you, but that also like was almost anchoring you to your childhood.
It was like remembering a younger brother who he had lost. And you think about that sometimes as an adult. It's like you as a child and how you wish you could protect yourself as a child in some way, or you wish you could go back and tell yourself as a child, like, this is going to be okay, or this is going to turn out all right, or this is how you should handle this. And I think that's kind of the feeling Harry has here, is like this little boy that he can look back on now, and he probably feels really bad for that little boy. When you're that kid, you're not thinking that about yourself. You're just like, I'm getting through this, and you know, whatever. But then Harry, and he looks at his cupboard and realizes how small that space was. And he just has a moment of quiet. And then the order arrives. Some people are repeat guests. And then they do the Polyjuice Potion. Then they leave Privet Drive forever. So that's our timeline.
Well, I think, too, you guys kind of talked about this, and I hadn't thought about it before, but you mentioned earlier, like, it's all he knew, right? So, like, that was his world for the first 11 years of his life. He probably didn't remember anything from before that, except some weird green flashes. But as like you said, even though it wasn't, he didn't realize at the time how abusive it was. To him, that was just normal. That's how life was. And so even growing out of that, I think there was still a fair amount of like, it's a safe place because it's the place that you knew it was predictable in a sense, right? He knew how the Dursleys would react and what they did and what they cared about. And so he could please them when he needed to and stay out of trouble so that he could, mind his own business and things. But yeah, leaving that behind is you just adding more predictability, right? So he's going out into the world, don't know what's going to happen next. Is he even going to live, the next few days, or is Voldemort going to find him? And it's pretty crazy step that he takes, especially knowing, like we said, the what the spell is, right? And the protection that he has living with his aunt, and that's going away.
Really
so
messed
it's a
up
whole new world
abusive.
in book 7.
A really messed up abusive relationship.
It's kind of like
basically.
it's the devil instead of, it's even like he knew how to handle the Dursleys to some degree, even though it was miserable. So like when Aunt Marge came in and was a chaos factor, that was really unsettling because he's like, oh, I know how to navigate this abuse, but not this. And I mean, anyone who's been through something traumatic, obviously there's like Stockholm syndrome, but there is like some sort of comfort in going, even like if it's a horrible situation, you knew how to navigate it. That was the situation that you were in for a long time.
You knew how
I
to.
think the devil is the perfect way to describe it.
Production wise, the original was filmed on a real street in Berkshire, not actually in Surrey. I'll go into that myself. And then they moved it to a set. But now we've got to look forward to how this is going to be handled in the TV show, both production wise, how much time we're going to spend there, how it's going to impact our story. So, Stephen, what do you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, right? For the first movie, they had a location which they just had to build for the other movies, right? So they basically recreated it and pretty dang closely. So we know that house fit the vibe that they wanted to portray. Yeah. And so, but we know that for the show, they are basically building a small city in Leavesden. And so we've seen pictures that I think we've talked about before, but are on X and have been posted other places where they've built kind of the whole street. They've built Privet Drive, and you can see the different houses. I don't know if we know exactly which one is number 4. And I think we've talked about the permanence of that, which is really important, right? Is that they are investing in 10 years of this and 7 seasons. Some people argue there might be more.
Well, especially when you think of how much they're actually going to need the exterior, might only be in certain seasons. And then it's like, are they going to build like around to Magnolia Crescent and show a park? Or because a park is only, and there's a subway or the Phoenix. And at what points are we actually going to need to see what and how much are we going to have an actual natural one-shot element? But yeah, they built out at least this stretch of the road, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so, and it sounds like there are some other key sets that are being built there. I think one they said was platform 9 3/4, and then there's others. And so it'll be interesting how they use the movie magic to kind of blend locations and things, right? Like, will they actually build that out for the future movies where he explores the neighborhood, or are they going to be able to cut it with, actual locations and things as they kind of grow into that? So we know they've been building a lot of these things. There's also a Muggle school exterior that they have been filming at in Hemel Hempstead.
Close enough.
You know where that is? Yeah.
Better see that kid on that roof. That's what I want to know.
But yeah,
but it sounds like for the most part, what they are doing a lot of the Muggle world shooting first, and so much of that is rooted in Privet Drive and some of the perfection that's tied into that, right? And the Dursleys, and you even see the picture we have of Petunia at the zoo, right? You get a good sense of how prim and proper she is, and fits the '90s mom vibe very well, actually, which is kind of hilarious to see.
I think, yeah, it's just worth saying then, how much are we going to see here? Because in the first one, we've said we want at least 2 episodes pre-Hogwarts, but that involves Diagon Alley, that involves a lot of non-Privet Drive. I hope that they either make the first episode of each season, when it comes to Harry's life, a longer episode. Like, okay, we'll get into Hogwarts and be more episodic, but even if season 2, instead of 2 episodes before Hogwarts, we get a 90-minute episode, because we want to see Harry go through that stuff with Dobby. We want to see in book 4, like Harry's misery and his nervousness to ask. And some of that needs a little bit of time to help build it up. So the key sequences that we want to keep from Privet Drive, obviously Marge will make it in. We want to see the Tongue Toffee. In book 5, we kind of get what we get, but it's like, I guess the later books you could start to really be like, it's only 30-40 minutes that are going to take place. But
The whole order has to go there twice.
And you also
So much
have to consider the other things that happen. So, like, for example, book 6, like we said, we don't go there till the 3rd chapter, and that's Harry's shortest time. So it's like, okay, are we going to get the other minister at all, period? Are we going to get the other minister? Are we going to get then Snape and then Harry all in one episode?
Well, I think too, it's telling as well. Like, for example, there's a Muggle school location, right? In the books, you get kind of a mention of the fact that Harry has had these things going on at school, but apparently they're going to show it. So I think it gives us kind of an idea too of what they're fleshing out, and so what we might see of the Muggle world. Like, we know the scene. There's an early scene in book 1 where Vernon is at work. So we're going to get to see, like, what's his office look like? What is his office building? Is it like in a dingy part of London, or is it like a fancy part of town? And is he, is his drill company he was a director of really like, is this like a high society thing, or is he kind of like a poser? You know what I mean? I think so much of that we get to see visually is going to help us to kind of define, Vernon, like, what is he really? And so there's so much of that. I think also, like, some of the things people are talking about is like set dressing. So when we talk about, hey, we've got Privet Drive, but like, do we get to see Privet Drive with Christmas decorations, snow at some point? Like, is there ever a point where we go back and we're able to kind of check in on like what's going on with the Dursleys? Would that add anything to the story or Dudley's development? So I think there's some cool ways where, again, just knowing that they're filming at the school and, what they're doing with the zoo scenes and stuff like that, that there could be some more fun to be had.
I think we just need enough at the beginning of those and that relationship to like have those feelings of Harry leaving it pay off, which honestly they almost do in the movies. So maybe we don't need much, but I want to see that misery. I want to see that contrasting relationship. All right, I'm going to...
Some sepia,
Can
maybe?
I just real fast?
Go.
Yeah, I just kind of what Steve was saying. I just want to see a reflection of like the house more so exemplifying like who the Dursleys are and Harry's experience there, where I feel like we didn't really get that as much in the movies. It just feels like the production design is great, but I want to feel that. And I want like the cinematography to be better. I think it'd be so cool to have shots of like the exterior of the home and like what's going on in the windows of the home at night. Like things that like that could tell us so much about Harry and the difference between him and the Dursleys and how the Dursleys treat him. And also getting a cohesive idea of like the house setup. Like I would love that. So it's not different every movie. Or it's like, wait, was this room on this side or this side? I'm really excited to see it from a different perspective and having a little bit, hopefully a little bit more of an artistic eye on that and using it kind of as a character within the story.
Well, and like in the original, like it's clean, but it's also like it's decorated the way you'd think like Petunia would decorate it, but then it does change a little bit subtly movie to movie. Like it's a little more old fashioned, and this will be very 90s. Like people here have been saying, oh, well, not here. People on Reddit from Britain apparently have said, oh, it'd be great if they just had like one of those old 90s shops that you don't see anymore. And like, I think if you saw something on the TV that was like, oh, that really would have been on the TV in the 90s of a suburban home.
And what did homes look like in the 90s? Because I don't feel like the Dursley, what they're showing as the Dursleys' homes, maybe, some people on the Reddit have said, like, that's the idea. The Dursleys and their home and how they dress is the idea of like, what an American would think they would do, as opposed to what the 90s were really like there.
Well,
but
that's funny because I've seen mostly defense of it from British people. They say like, oh, that's what would have been built in a suburban area. In fact, what we've seen from the newer overhead shots that were leaked, it was almost a mock Tudor style, and they said that was very popular in the 70s and 80s. So it's like if this was built late 80s, it'd be like, oh, this is what it felt like. The interior, I guess, is more up for debate.
That's what I'm talking about. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was not talking about the exterior. When I drove past Surrey, the one time I ever did that in England, it does look like that. Everything looks the same. There's kind of like this brown tent, like to everything. But I was talking about like the interior of the home, and then like their actual wardrobe.
Well, I thought in the early ones it was, and then it kind of modernizes over time a little bit. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Surrey. So Surrey, apparently it means different things to a lot of people. When I first heard Surrey, I heard it was more of an affluent area, which a lot of it is, but there are some ghetto areas, there are some dangerous areas, especially those closer to London. So Surrey has changed shape many, many times, but there's an area that's very much known as Surrey with a handful of smaller places. And you wouldn't necessarily say I'm from Surrey, but you might give it as a broader area if someone doesn't know. Like if you're from Guildford, you would say Guildford. And so part of Surrey is in Greater London, but a lot of it is just outside of London. But while there's places within Greater London where you'd say, oh, I'm from Richmond, not necessarily from London, even though it's well within London, you would you definitely identify Surrey kind of as its own place, but it's London adjacent. Whereas if you lived in Essex or you lived in Brighton, you would be like, I live in the south of England, but those are not near England at all. And then of course you get further away towards Devon and everything. So it's southeast of there. It's not crazy to think you'd commute into London, but everything I was reading was like Vernon probably didn't work in London. And I'm like, does it ever explicitly say that he's going into London for work?
I don't think it does. It just says he's going over. Yeah, Jamie, bust that book up.
I will say there's this article on the getsurrey.co.uk all about where do we think they actually lived, like what inspired it. And the thing is, J.K. Rowling never really lived there, right? So it's not, I don't know how much she picked like a suburban area where there would be like affluent people, or you'd move there so you could tell people you lived there, even though Surrey's a little bit more of a mixed bag. It's got a lot of beautiful green space, but it is a lot of affluent areas, and a lot more foreign money is coming in and investing in Surrey now. There's also a lot of headquarters there. So like you'd think they'd all be in London, but actually some companies like Canon, Samsung, Philips, also someone noted that DeWalt headquarters are within driving distance, but they're not in the nicest area. So if he works for a drill company, it'd be funny if it was DeWalt. And then they said there's a smaller one that is in
some sponsorship going there with DeWalt.
Yeah, in a place nearby. Someone said after, this is someone from Surrey, said Dorking, Reigate, and Redhill are the best placed towns for an easy drive to Horley, which is where they thought that maybe Vernon would have lived. And they even found like, you know, a little bakery across from a drill place. And so that people have really tried to narrow it down.
Hang on though. I'm processing that there are places called Dorking and Horley that I didn't know that was
Horley with an H, not with a W.
Thank you for that.
Our nicknames for Steven, so that's like so funny. It does say that
they're named after me.
It just says that he's but on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else. He sat in the usual morning traffic. He couldn't help notice to see something strangely about people. So it just talks that he drives into town. So I guess that could mean a lot of things.
It's not preposterously far, but everyone was saying that too. It would be a full day trip to go to King's Cross, because they do kind of intonate that would be a few hours to King's Cross. So also, if he works in the city of London, then he would have a massive commute. It wouldn't really make sense.
And he wouldn't be able to drive in and park in the parking lot.
And this is not to patronize anyone, but the city of London itself is a square mile, which is on the east side of central London, Greater London. So there is a lot of business there, but there's also other centers of business around London where it could be. But anyway, everyone was just like, this is a very realistic depiction of where someone who wanted to be uppity would live. There's tons and tons of these developments where all the houses look the same. And some of them are older, so they have some character. And those are all over London, outside of London. I'm not going to pretend to be familiar with all these suburban areas, but everyone has just said this is very makes sense. And also they have these tiny little lawns, so them curating them isn't crazy or anything. So it was just funny to go through it. Go ahead.
Something I was curious about, because in book 2, we know that Vernon puts bars on Harry's window. So in my mind, that's always been kind of like a battle between Vernon trying to keep Harry prisoner. But bars on the window are also pretty visible, right? Is that more common in like suburban London than I'm realizing? Like,
no, it would look bad.
Places I've visited.
Now, if you're in the rough
like
area,
one house on the street with bars on the window,
it's in the back.
It's kind of like showing everyone, like, hey, we got some really screwy going on. Look at these bars I put on the window.
But anyway, it's very realistic, apparently, depiction of where the Dursleys might live and them trying to win competitions. We've all walked through it at the Harry Potter. Sorry, Stephen. Jamie and I have walked through this house at the Harry Potter studio tour. It's a lot of fun, and it means a lot to Harry. I think it's worth seeing that contrast and see that, oh yeah, I did. There's a picture. And also even on the back of they had a Deathly Hallows thing on the back of the sign that said Privet Drive. So it is like a fun little morsel, and it is a location that means a lot to Harry and apparently kind of works within the frame of the story in the real world. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you guys have any final thoughts on Privet Drive?
Well, I just think, the location itself, it's like Harry's whole hope is getting away from it. So like going to Hogwarts, hopefully moving in with Sirius. It's all trying to escape Privet Drive, but it's really trying to escape the Dursleys. And then in the end, I think he's happy to leave it. It's a very big part of who Harry is. And so I hope to see it in the show more. But at the same time, the whole time we're hoping as readers that he gets away from it. And that's, I think, why we like Sirius so much, is because like this is our hope to get away from Privet Drive. Yeah. So it's interesting.
It plays a great role in the way the world gets bigger. And like that was a villain to start, and how much smaller that seems to Harry in the long run.
It's true. I think one last thing about it though is just that the way that the Muggle world kind of sucks for Harry. I think there's other times in the series where they mentioned like, no, not all Muggles are bad, right? Because there's a lot of wizards who think that, right? They're all just terrible people who want to kill all the wizards or whatever, force them to do magic for them, everything like that. And so he has that understanding, like there are good Muggles too, but it's part of what really catapults him into the magical world. Is like you said, it's like, I get away from this, I get to go to the school. And even though Hogwarts has its imperfections, I think we could do a whole podcast on all the problems with how they do things at Hogwarts and how dangerous it is and stuff. It's a really fun, great place for Harry to go to because it's so much better than Privet Drive. And it really just drives the story in that direction where magic is good and it can be used for good things. And it's Harry happens to be really good at it. And so he is key to the continuance of the magical world. And so where he comes from and his progress over time, it has to have a starting point. And it's a perfect starting point.
And I think it, like nostalgia wise, it'll be cool to see the house like kind of the interior design changed throughout the years of what's like in and popular. I think that's kind of the petunia they're going to go for, like someone always trying to keep up with the Joneses. The most modern things, like, is Dudley gonna have a 64, like things like that. It would be cool as like our generation to see those things change throughout time when we do check in at Privet Drive.
It just need to be subtle, But I
Yeah.
think just lastly, it kind of points to, even if you had a good childhood, there's something about growing out of that space. And I think it's so representative for Harry, like for everyone, for like, I ended up going really far away. And like, sometimes I don't regret it, but I dearly like miss things about home. But I think, going to university and then going to another big city, which is a staple for a lot of people, is like, that is quite the experience these days, But yeah, that's our examination of number 4, Privet Drive, and we're also very excited for these new audiobooks, and my child just pooped for sure. Anyway, thanks for joining us. If you want to let us know your thoughts on Privet Drive or what location you think should be covered next, we don't necessarily have to go in chronological order. Give us a shout, comment on things, give us a follow on social media at HPTVPod on Instagram or TikTok. Email us at HPTVPodcast@gmail.com. We're getting some real traction once in a while with a random TikToks. Jamie's smashing it out there.
Wipe my face.
Yeah, but once again, thanks for joining us, and we will be back with another deep dive and all the updates for the Harry Potter TV show next time. Jamie, send us out.
Peace out, snitches.